All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Y'all might notice I am not Vance Riley. Unfortunately, Chief Riley had to stay home. He has several sick family members, very sick family members, so he sent out an email the other day asking if I could chair the meeting and explaining to the council he would not be here. So if everyone's thoughts would be with Chief Riley and his family, we'd appreciate that. So with that, we will go ahead and move into the GETAC meeting. I don't have I'll pull out my attendee list in a second. We do have a quorum, so we are ready to go. First item of business is approval of the minutes. The minutes should be in your packet. Give everybody a second to take a look at it and entertain a motion for approval in second. I have a motion? Second. I have a second. We usually do that and then somebody finds something. So with the motion on the floor, I'll still give everybody a couple of seconds to look through the minutes and see if they find anything, and we'll make sure it's okay before I call for the vote. Did you read? Yeah. You read them? Ooh, Beeson read them. All right. All right. I will call the question then. Unless I hear dissension, we will consider the minutes approved. Any dissension or any corrections? Minutes are approved. Under chair report and discussion, Chief Riley, the only thing that Chief Riley asked me to share, I will share later. It has to do with the trauma system plan that we're working on and his desire that it stay on target, stay on time. So we'll move into reports. Kathy Perkins could not be here today, so I understand that Jane Guerrero is going to fill in for her and do a couple of reports for us. You're up. Sorry.
That's all right. I'm not ready, but that's okay.
I can get Dr. Beeson to do a tap dance if you would like.
That'd be great.
Let me see that.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to give the report for Ms. Perkins. With regards to Senate Bill 8, the report on that is sections 13 through 15 for HHSC, TMB, and DSHS recommendations to reduce fraud, waste, and abuse in the EMS industry. We developed a report that was sent to HHSC and on up to the legislature. That report is now on the website, and that is on HHSC's website. It was posted on 3/13. I can send you the web address. It's the hhsc.state.tex.us reports 2014, and you'll see SB 8 non-emergency transportation if you are interested in reading that report in total. You may be aware or have heard that we have had an issue with our tobacco funding. The tobacco endowment appropriations have been reduced for the fiscal years 2014 and 15 for that biennium. It was not just for trauma. The endowment was reduced in other areas for DSHS also, so it impacted 3 different programs. DSHS, through the appropriations of all of the DSHS tobacco funds, had been increased and did not find out, and we did not find out until actually the beginning of the second quarter that this funding had been reduced. We actually, when we were looking at the Appropriations Act, we were kind of thrilled. We thought we had extra money, but that is not the case. It took a lot of research to find out really what happened. Basically, a bill was passed in the first special session in 2011 that allowed the the tobacco endowment, the actual corpus of the endowment, to be given out or to be appropriated out to CPRIT. So in 2014, the tobacco allocations that actually occurred, about $36 million of the corpus of that endowment was given out to CPRIT.
Can you explain that acronym to the audience, please?
CPRIT is the cancer. It's a cancer. Thank you. Actually, so for fiscal year 2014, the tobacco allocations for the RACs and LPGs were going to be, what our total appropriation was going to be, around $2.4 million, and that's literally what we give out to the RACs is $2.4 million. The amounts and the the department was able to cover any shortfall for 2014, so the RACs will not be impacted. They'll actually get their fourth quarter deposit as soon as they give us their report for the third quarter. It's ready to go. The department is looking at contingencies right now for fiscal year 15 to see where we can make up that shortfall. That funding not only funds RACs, but it funds some of the department's activities too, like salaries. So there are contingency plans being worked now, but we don't have any final word on it. When we had rec chairs on Wednesday night, I told them as soon as we know for sure what we're doing and what's been covered, we will let them know. They did ask at rec chairs if we could give them a worst case scenario and a middle of the road, what it would be if we maybe 75% of what the worst case scenario would be, so that they could make some contingency plans, and we said that we would do that. Any questions related to the tobacco funding issue?
But that won't really take effect until next year, correct? Or
No, it took effect this year.
okay.
What happened is we were anticipating an additional deposit, basically, to our account. And we were moving forward with doing the planning with the American College of Surgeons to come in and do the regional assessments. And so we were watching the account very closely, and what actually was deposited was less than what we anticipate we would get on that first quarter. And so it raised some red flags, and we started asking some questions. We thought it was just an error, accounting error. And the more we dug, the more questions we asked, we found out, well, no, it's not an accounting error. And then we started asking more questions and found out that it looked like the endowment, the corpus of the endowment had been reduced. And so the appropriations was reduced, and it was not temporary. This was a permanent reduction. So that's how it got started, Dr. Greenberg. Okay. So
I was thinking there was something when we talked about this before. There wouldn't be. You said that the impact was going to be lower until next year. Is it project? Okay, that's project grants. Was that it?
This year.
There was something that was not affected
This year. Be affected next year.
Well, correct. We found out, in the middle of the fiscal year, basically, that this was going on. So we had to do internally some shifting around. So the things that we would have paid for out of that account, we stopped using that account. So all of the monies that were in that account would go for we would be using for the racks and so forth. So the pieces that we were using for, and GETAC comes out of there too, by the way, we shifted it to other accounts. So we were looking to cover the shortfall for 2014 specifically for the racks, and so we were able to do that.
Okay, that's the.
Yeah, but right now what is going on is we're looking at how can we cover that shortfall for next year, not just for the racks, but for the department also.
Okay.
All right. Also, we have upcoming LAR hearings. The details are on the main DSHS webpage. It's going to be on Tuesday, May the 22nd at 1 o'clock. That's next week.
Jane, what is LAR?
Legislative appropriations request.
Thank you.
It's going to be, I'm not sure where this is, 909 West 45th Street. Is that the Morton building? That's Dad's building. Okay. That's in the Dad's building. And then on Monday, June the 2nd at 2 p.m., it says at various locations across the state. So you'd have to check the website to find out where those locations will be. Sunset is upcoming on May the 22nd. The report will be released to the public on June the 24th and 25th. There's a sunset hearing for DSHS, DADS, DARS, and DFPS. And on August 13th, the Sunset Commission will have a decision meeting. I do not know where those will be held. And that concludes Ms. Perkins' report, items that she was going to cover. Do you have any questions?
What does the decision meeting entail? Is that when we would find out if any part was sunsetted or recommended for sunset, or?
I am not sure on the decision meeting. John, do you know? Renee?
It's going to include any recommendations that Sunset has related to the department and the enterprise.
Yeah,
Okay.
anything to make the department more efficient in using taxpayer dollars and to operate our program more efficiently. So they typically, could make recommendations to transfer programs to another agency or what have you.
Okay.
And the in your packets, you have the funding report. Do you have any questions related to that?
So, since we were
This-
specifically talking about the tobacco funds, if we go to that section, I can't really tell from looking at this how we've been impacted. Maybe, oh.
Well, it goes through fiscal year 2014. So you can see below that it says Regional EMS Trauma System Development. This is the RAC contracts. 2.4 million contracts were started in September the 1st of 2013, and they end this year. So the way it works, we get an appropriation, but we don't get payment until the money is in the account, and so the appropriation is an estimate. Now, the 2.4 million is actually what we would receive, and we are receiving, okay? And that is going out to cover the racks. So they will get their last quarter payment once they submit their reports for their third quarter, okay? So it's not impacted. For the coming fiscal year, which would start September 1, those, that's what we are really looking at, contingency plans on how do we cover any shortfall that might occur. So that's not going to be on here.
Okay.
Okay. We still have EAF money available. For 14, we had fiscal year 14, we had a total of $1 million set aside. We've funded 6 EAFs so far, but we still have $772 million, 700 million, wouldn't that be great? $772,000 set aside for EAFs.
So what's the deadline? What's the deadline to apply for those funds? Is it still the end of the fiscal year?
EAFs, it'd be the end of the fiscal year. You know, we have hurricane season coming up, so that's can be a time when we have a lot of activity in requests for that if there are storms and services are impacted. That money, what happens to that money at the end of the year, if it's not used, then it gets pushed out to the hospitals generally. Now, in this case, since we're looking to cover shortfall for next year, whatever remains in accounts will probably be held over to make up that shortfall for next year. So that's a potential.
Jane,
Yes, sir.
you said that any of the funds that were left from the EAF might be pushed out to hospitals?
Mm-hmm.
Since
That's-
that money was actually for first responders, any reason why it wouldn't go to EMS first?
Well, we have the mechanism that we have to push that money out. It goes out to the uncompensated trauma care fund, and it just gets dispersed out to them in general. It ends up being just a few $100s per facility generally. It's just the mechanism that we have in place to empty the accounts, because you don't want to leave money on the table.
Right, I'm just wondering
Right.
a way we can empty those accounts to EMS, since that's who the fund was originally slated for. We need to work on that.
I don't have that mechanism at the moment.
Okay,
Okay?
let's find one.
Okay.
It's actually written in statute that whatever money is remaining will roll over to hospitals. So throughout the year, they have that advantage that EMS will take first dibs on this, but it's written in the rule that anything left over rolls over for hospitals.
Written in rule, written in statute.
Well, sorry, statute.
Okay. Those are very, we know those are very different, how we have to change
Yeah.
those, so it is law.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
All right. Yep.
And you know about the issue with the regional assessments. We've already talked about that, but I'll briefly go over that, and that really...
Yeah, I don't think everybody was here for the
Okay,
retreat.
all right. When we thought we had extra funds to spend, we went down the road of figuring out how we could do 22 regional assessments of the trauma systems. We started having conversations with the American College of Surgeons on how this could be done. And as we went down this road, we realized that we really needed to, it would have been good if we'd had our process figured out and worked out before we got to the point where, okay, you have the funding and now you can go do it. So in the probably, let's see, November, December, and January, my staff and I were working very hard with the American College of Surgeons to plan this out on how this would work. And then when we hit the budget sinkhole, we pulled the plug on it. And so we do not know when we will do the regional assessments. It is, we have that intent to do those regional assessments still. When it will occur, I do not know, and I don't know in what shape, form, or fashion. Originally, it was going to be a joint process between the American College of Surgeons, some schools of public health that we had partnered with on some of their grad students, and our staff to be doing these 22 regional assessments within a 2-year period. So that plan has changed, and we don't know when they will start or what it would look like. There's been some discussion at some of the committees that maybe we should start talking about how can we do it internally, how can we do it with just Texas folks, how can we do it without the college. That has not been explored, but there was a request to let's have some conversations about that over the summer and see what we can do, and we are very open to that. That really does conclude my report. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer it.
Okay. I would comment, we do have a great deal of expertise within the state for trauma center reviews. Any questions, comments, concerns, besides the fiscal concerns, which we unfortunately cannot fix? All right. Move on to our next report, Assistant Commissioner Report for Division for Disease Control and Prevention.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'd like to thank you for allowing us the time to provide you with this update. Assistant Commissioner Zumbrum was going to give the update. She asked that I do it, although Assistant Commissioner Zumbrum is here. Good morning. So
Morning.
As some of you may know, we've had some staff changes. However, our staff are near full capacity right now. We have a few more to fill. We have an excellent staff, as some people have observed over this week in terms of the work they've been doing with the trauma registry. So far, the team right now has been continuing to work on the 2014 system improvement goals that were established, and they've made a lot of progress in several key areas. Some of the areas that they've been focusing in on have included customer service, trauma reporting, and use of data. So I'll try and give you a brief update of the activities that we've been doing within these areas. For customer service, the program have been working to improve the whole customer service processes. All customer service issues and requests are now being funneled through our program email address and entered into a database accessible to all the customer service staff. Our goal has been to respond to every issue that they receive within 3 to 5 business days. And so far for 2014, the median time from the time an issue is open to the time it's resolved has been 2 days. And the average time right now has been 5 days. So we still got some work to do, but the statistics are looking good for us in terms of how quickly we're responding. We're also developing a new data submission feedback report for users who submit data to the registry. We hope that this report will provide a more useful information on data quality and the errors for each of the data submissions, both to the users and to our own customer service support team. One of the projects we've been working on is the implementation of a DSHS Health Services Gateway. We're one of the first programs within the department to be actually working with our IT staff to implement into this gateway. This gateway will enable users to connect to the trauma registry to submit data without having to manually upload files. So it'll make the process much more transparent and easy for users. The new feedback report and the Health Services Gateway scheduled for implementation in July. So we're coming to the point where those things will be implemented. And hopefully it will provide users of the registry with an overall better experience as they use it to enter data and view data. With respect to trauma reporting and use of data, the program is developing annual EMS and hospital summary reports to provide a snapshot of the data that are in the registry. They've been working with stakeholders to determine which data indicators to focus on and how best to present the information. We need a lot of help on this from stakeholders. Right now we're coming up with what we think might work, but we need some input, and staff have been looking for input from stakeholders to make these reports even better. So they've been presenting these reports at all the GETAC committee meetings this week with the hope of obtaining feedback from the users on things they might do to improve the reports. To improve EMS and trauma reporting, we've been and will continue to work towards full implementation of the NTDB and NEMSIS national standards. Stakeholders have determined that the full implementation of these standards is necessary to enable comparisons between local, state, and national performance. Full implementation of the NTDB standards in Texas will occur over the next couple of months. Webinars have been scheduled with the users' respective vendors, because we have to work with the vendors to make sure that they can submit the data in those formats, next week to finalize the Texas custom data elements they need to incorporate into the systems prior to full implementation. We're on schedule for hospitals who submit data using third-party software to start reporting both the 2000 NTDB and the Texas custom data elements July of this year. So we should be ready by July for that. For EMS entities, we're in the process of finalizing the NEMSIS Texas custom data elements, and we'll be working towards certification for reporting NEMSIS version 3 data, which is the most latest version of NEMSIS. Implementation for 2014 EMS data submissions is scheduled for later this summer. In conclusion, we've been continuing to improve the functionality of the registry and have added new summary reports to the website on data submitted to the registry. As always, we really welcome feedback on the reports that we develop and like to hear from users about other types of analysis they'd like to see using the registry data that they might feel is useful. We've also been working with our TxDOT, Texas Department of Transportation, to secure additional funding for the trauma registry for fiscal year 2015. Thus far, we've been notified that we're nominated by TxDOT to take the grant request forward to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, who is the federal agency from which the monies originate. We expect a decision on the grant application with respect to the funding sometime in July. As always, I just want to thank you all for the support that you guys have provided the registry, and we're going to continue to work towards making it better and better.
Okay. Any questions? And actually, is Dr. Metzger in the room?
Yes, she is. She's here.
Could you go ahead and give your report at the same time since we're on the registry? Maybe that would make it more cohesive. And then we open it up to any thoughts or discussion about the registry, if that's okay.
Sure.
For those of you that don't attend the medical director committee, I never follow an agenda in order. I don't do it on purpose. It's just, I think it's the ER doc in me.
Actually, I was going to make that request.
Okay. It just seems to make more sense this way to keep us on track. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christy Metzger, and I'm an epidemiologist. I'm the acting manager for the Injury Epidemiology and Surveillance Branch, which does include the EMS Trauma Registry. What I'm going to do is actually I don't have a whole lot more updates than what Dr. Villanacci said, except to where you can find things. Okay. So as Dr. Villanacci said, we're improving the customer service process, and these training webinars are scheduled for next week. For vendors, we have a webinar to go over the Texas custom hospital questions that go along with the NTDB questions that we will be starting to collect, and that webinar is on the 20th. And then for all stakeholders, we have a webinar giving updates on NTDB and other improvements to the system on the 22nd. Both of the information about these is on our website, and also will be sent out to stakeholders through, Jane is going to send out an email plus TTAF and TTCF. So you can always email me as well if you need additional information. My email is christy.metzger@dshs.state.tx.us, or you can always email our, at the very bottom is our injury.web email address, and that's our program email address. And that is checked by our customer service staff and will be forwarded to the right person. Dr. Villanacci mentioned that we are improving our customer service response process, and our goal is to respond to requests within 3 to 5 business days. Again, the median time from opening the issue to close is 2 days, and the average time is 5 days. There's definitely some issues that take a little bit longer to resolve, but our customer service staff is basically dealing with about 100 issues about every month. If you do need help accessing the registry, you can send an email to injury.web@dshs.state.tx.us. There's also training slides and training information on our website. If you're on the left-hand side, there's a link that says training. You can go there and find a whole bunch of information. I wanted to show how much data we have so far in 2014 into our registry. This is through the very beginning of May. We have received about 11,000 records in the hospital trauma data system from about 200 entities. There is a 90-day, in the rules, right, rules? In the rules, hospitals have 90 days from the date of discharge to submit the data. So this is not surprising that we have a lot more data for January and less for February, March, and April. We know data are still coming in. We're encouraging everyone to keep submitting data, even for 2013, especially this week. I've talked to a lot of people, and several entities are poised to submit more data for 2013, especially as some of the new processes for submitting data and moving to NDDB and NEMSIS go forward this summer.
So to clarify that
Yeah.
slide, that's not showing that
No.
you're not missing data,
No.
it's just a lag in the data being entered?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And
That
so the next
looks like
time,
it's going the wrong way otherwise.
right, yeah, no. I was a little bit worried about showing the slide, but I want to show you what's there. And, you know, obviously, the quicker people get data submitted, then this line is going to start moving more horizontally. Actually, like the EMS records, EMS entities tend to submit data in a more timely manner. It's just the function of the way their data systems work. And so a little over 355,000 runs have been reported by over 400 entities through the end of through the end of April. And of note, trauma records are about 10% of all runs in our system right now. If you are interested in looking at some of the data that we do have, we have created state summary reports and RAC summary reports for EMS and hospital data. If you go to our webpage at the main DSHS website /injury, at the very top there's a link that says updated state summary reports for EMS and hospital. So if you click on there, it'll take you to a page with the reports, or you can go on the left-hand side. There's a link to data and statistics, and it has reports there. This is just a screenshot of the where you can find the summary reports for the state and for each RAC. We would really like your feedback. I've said this many times already, and I've already gotten lots of really great feedback from this meeting, just talking to individual people about what we can present in the summary reports and what kind of special reports people are interested in. Again, the summary reports are really snapshots of the registry data. The data used in the reports up on our website is for 2013. It is provisional. Like I said, we are still receiving more 2013 data, and we will update those reports later this year. Special analyses, there's a couple special analysis reports up there. Mechanism of injury will be up there if it's not already, plus submersion and a couple other special reports on using select data. And if you have other reports that you think would be interesting by topic or specific data elements, let us know. We really want to know how you want to use this data and how you can use this data in your work, and how you want it presented. So any feedback, please send to, again, injury.web@dshs.state.tx.us. And if you need other data that is not part of these summary reports, let us know. Again, send your email request to injury.web. Once we get it, one of the epidemiologists on our team will contact you to clarify what you really want, and if we have the data that will help you. And our goal is to get those data requests back out to you within 10 business days. Shorter one, less complicated ones will take less time. More complicated ones will take more time. But 10 days is our estimate. And that's it.
Questions? Comments?
I have one question. On your webinars,
Yes.
will they be available for offline viewing afterwards? Will you record them and make them available if people can't be there live?
The slides will definitely be available.
Okay.
I'm not sure if the audio recordings will be, but I
Okay.
can check.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner, I have a question. When your reports, the auto-generated reports, do they anywhere on the report talk about the percentages or the known entities that are submitting data?
It
'Cause I would
does.
hate somebody to print out a report thinking this, knowing that, at least from the EMS side, that's less than half the EMS agencies that are actually submitting data.
I can't off the top of my head remember if that part is in the if that particular statistics are in the report, but we do have the entities that have contributed to the report listed in the report.
I think it'd be important, at least for somebody. I would hate somebody to take that report and think that that is complete and accurate data. I should take the word accurate out, but
Complete data, yeah. That's a good point. We could add that. Thank you.
What are the, since everyone is supposed to be reporting, what are the barriers to people reporting and what's being done about the people that aren't reporting? And I know that's not really yours. I guess that's more of a general question. You get the data.
Right.
But from your standpoint, what's the barrier? And then from the state standpoint, from DSHS, we'd like to know kind of what needs to happen.
So from a technological standpoint, some of the barriers that we've run across recently is some of the systems that vendors use or particular entities use are not necessarily compatible with Maven, which is our registry system right now. We are addressing a lot of those issues with some of the new uploading functions that we're building this summer. We're starting to accept XML files now instead of just text files, as well as moving to NTDB and NEMSIS for the hospitals and entities who are already compliant with NTDB and NEMSIS. That'll be a seamless upload. We are anticipating that once those barriers are removed, that some people who haven't been able to submit data for several months will be able to upload all that historical data. Let's see. When we know about people having issues with like that, then we log them in. We talk to our Consilience, who's the software maker and builder of the registry, to address those sorts of things. There's also just user challenges. There are some people who, there's just user challenges, and so
we're familiar with those.
Yeah. So again, when individual users they contact us for help, we're part of our process. Our customer service process is logging what the issues are. So when we start seeing patterns, we can address them in a larger way. So.
What we can't address are the ones that don't contact us.
Right.
Dr. Mincher, I want to thank you for all the work that your department has done. I've been really impressed how, we started out with lots and lots of challenges, and I really appreciate y'all's customer service. I've been visiting with people, and really, y'all have moved that ball along a long ways, and we really appreciate all you're doing, and know that y'all will continue to smooth out the difficulties. But we do appreciate y'all's hard work.
I appreciate that. We have a really, really good staff right now. They're all really enthusiastic and motivated, so I appreciate that.
It shows. It really does. Thank you for being at these meetings and bringing your staff.
So just to clarify,
Yeah.
You said it's not complete data. What percentage do we think is not being submitted? And does it finally get complete?
So for 2013 and so far for 2014, we have about 50% more or less of the EMS entities reporting and about 50% of hospitals reporting. That doesn't necessarily mean that 50% of the data are being reported, because there's some big entities that are in the system and reporting, and so they contribute, obviously more of the data. We are in the process of assessing that more carefully, because that's definitely a question we keep getting. So hopefully by the next GETAC, we'll be able to answer that question better about the size of the hospitals or the level of the hospitals, to get a better handle on what proportion of the data are being reported. Right now, about 50% of the entities on both EMS and hospital are reporting.
And we'll provide that data to individual racks in terms of the percentage or the numbers of providers within their areas who are reporting, submitting data, and those who are not. So.
But for me to better understand, Jane, the requirement is 90 days, 3 months, to have the data submitted?
From discharge.
From discharge. And what's the ramifications if the entity doesn't do that?
If they don't,
Correct.
we'll take it whenever they give it to us.
So there's no requirement. It's an expectation.
Well, it is in the rule. It is part of the requirement in the rule, but if they don't give it to us and they have an issue with it, with some reporting piece, we're not going to ding them for it. We're going to take their information whenever they can get it to us.
It just seems concerning that we don't have 2013 data and we're already halfway into the new calendar year, essentially.
Yes, now that's one of the things that we're going to be doing is working with the RACs to identify hospitals and EMS agencies that are not reporting to the registry and have them start going back to them and say, you need to start reporting. Quite honestly, with the difficulties that we had with the registry in the past, we did not push the issue, Dr. Dyrod. We just didn't. That's going to be coming to pretty much a screeching halt because the registry is able to house the data, receive the data, turn the data around. So those positions will start changing.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Absolutely.
Kind of have one more question along the lines of that number of entities. Is it possible that RACs who have their own initial reporting software, could they be reporting an aggregate for hospitals and or EMSs, and then in your entity count would look like one entity but in reality they reported for multiple providers or healthcare facilities?
So we keep track of the entities that took care of the patient. So in our estimates of how many entities are reporting, it's not by the submitter, but it's by the facility.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? I think this is the best report we've had on the registry ever, maybe, because it's working. It sounds like it's working. We're getting data. We have people who are telling us to please call them, and we can give you information. So we've been a long way getting here. So now we just need to work on that 50% of people who aren't getting their information in. And I guess honestly, I can't blame the state for not pushing it really hard, given all of the effort, all the problems with the registry. But you did say what I think we wanted to hear, which is that's coming to an end. Because the registry will only be as good as the data that goes into it. And then we want to start getting stuff out of it. So thank you all very much. Very good job. Very impressed. Because I have to admit,
Thank you.
when every time somebody says there's going to be a report from the registry, the hair goes back on the back of my neck, and I just wonder what we're going to hear from. But now this is excellent, so that's a good thing.
It's been a long road.
Long road, a lot of work, and at least we've really got something to show for it. So again, thank you very much.
I think Dr. Stewart would be happy if he was here. You know?
Yeah. I'm sure Dr. Stewart's watching. Right.
He has us.
Yeah. All right. Next, Assistant Commissioner Report, Division for Regional and Local Health Services. Do we have someone to give that report?
Does not look like it.
Yeah, okay. All right. And then next is Preparedness Coordinating Council. And I have not seen or heard, might I say, Eric Epley this meeting. I know he's down in San Antonio. Is there, I hope he's watching. Is there anybody that can give a report for the Preparedness Council or even jump down to the Disaster Emergency Preparedness Committee where he's also listed? Looks like we have somebody for that.
I can give the report on the committee. I cannot do it on the council, though. That's the only thing I do not have. So the committee met this past week in San Antonio during the TDEM conference. One of the big things that did come out of it was Dr. Kidd has been working with Allison Woody down in Houston and working with getting all of the medical examiners together. So during this year, they were able to get a meeting with all 13 medical examiners across the state of Texas together in one room at one time and actually discuss some of the issues with mass fatality, different issues that those medical examiners in coordination with the JPs might have. And as I understand it, that was actually the first time that type of meeting has taken place where they've actually had all of them in the same room. So more to follow on that, but definitely some great progress with the groups that are working on that. And part of that, they did discuss the T-Mord and et cetera. And that actually has not taken place for 10 years is what it was. 10 years since they had all met like that. So it's been quite a while. A little bit of updates on the Emergency Medical Task Force. Dishes did list it as an exceptional item under the list, so we're just waiting for to see how that goes. But EMTF was actually listed as an exceptional item for this year. EMTF did deploy, as you guys may know, to not only South Padre Island for the exercise there, but also the Baton Death March. Saw over 400 patients at Baton and 180 patients at South Padre Island. So good exercise, good experience for all the crews and folks that were involved in that. Did definitely make a difference in Baton, and we feel like we made a difference as well in South Padre. Offset quite a bit of patients that needed to go to the hospital that did not affect EMS. At least for that short time, they were able to actually treat them and stabilize them, of which they saw multiple unconscious people that were actually intubated within the MMU itself. So these were definitely real patients and not just bumps and bruises. They were real medical and trauma patients. San Antonio Fire Department Training Division developed the AMBUS training video. It has just been posted to some of the websites, and it's being handed out to the coordinators now. So you're probably going to start seeing that within your regions pretty quick, and then of course you folks will see it as well. It's a very well put video. Pretty much brings all of the buses together and shows them in action. Most of it is all training though, but it's a very good image of EMTF and as well as the AMBUS project. The next plans on that is to actually develop the same video for the MMU so that we can send that out. All 13 of the AMBUSes, per the request of Chief Kidd, have a built-in notification system now for their dispatch and their activation. So TDEM will actually get at the SOC a notification anytime that the AMBUS is actually assigned to a mission where they need to be notified. It's going to be an automatic update to them. So instead of kind of waiting that, hey, we're deploying an AMBUS and potentially taking 20 plus patients somewhere, they're going to get kind of that notice of it right away. So it's going to be built into the automatic dispatching software. One of the big parts of the meeting, though, is Regina Morales from I want to say ERCOT, but she's the Public Utility Commission. Thank you, Deli. Public Utility Commission came and gave a talk on. It was supposed to be on the EMP, the electromagnetic pulse, but it quickly went into what about ERCOT, what about the grid, et cetera, and that pretty much took the meeting. Very good discussion, very good questions. She's actually going to come together with ERCOT and come back to the meeting and discuss some more. But if you remember the 2011 issue and some other issues when we started having the rolling blackouts, it's a huge threat to hospitals, to EMS, as simple as going down to your bay doors don't work all of a sudden, and you have to get an ambulance or a fire truck out. It's a huge issue to public safety, and she was there to discuss and answer some questions and going to do the same thing as we bring ERCOT on. And that is pretty much the notes that I have for the disaster committee.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions?
How many people did you see at the Bataan? I didn't.
It was 400. I'm sorry, I had it on me, Victor. It was like 400, mid 400s. 424. There you go. 400 and a quarter almost. Yes, 424, and then 180 to 181. I joke about that because one patient ran out with his chart, and so we're not sure if he got counted twice. But 180 to 181 at South Padre.
And that was all geriatrics at South Padre, of course.
No, but there were 9. We do say the joke about the, you bring up a good point, because as soon as we fired up we saw the first patient before we even set up. They saw the truck pull in, and a guy was having chest pain, and he drove in. And so our Type 5 MMU, if you will, with the Suburban actually treated him and got him stabilized. He was actually actively having chest pain when he came in. But the next morning, as we were giving our briefings, 9 people walked in and said, we're here to be evaluated, and we didn't understand and they were all geriatrics, they were in their 70s. They came in and they had a, just joking around about, oh, I'm having cough, cold, and congestion. And we found out that one of the park folks from South Padre had told them, hey, they're doing an exercise, go in there and give them patients something to treat. So it was like, okay, let's run them through the tracking software, no big deal. And we processed them through. When then I saw one of the physicians writing out a prescription. I said, hey, we don't really actually need to fake a prescription. He goes, no, it's for real. She has pink eye. And actually, two of them, one ended up having pink eye and one was actually walking pneumonia, and they were actually treated as real patients. So,
No, you're sick. Trust me.
Two of them actually were sick out of the 9 that were sample patients. So, but we did see an age range of 2 years old that came in all the way up to in the 70s, 80s.
Wow. Okay.
So, and the majority being 18 to 20.
Right. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you. We are starting into the committee reports. I know some of the committee chairs have planes to catch or patients to see, and some of the committee chairs are sitting at the table, so we're stuck here. So I don't mind taking these out of order if anyone needs to catch a plane. I know Dr. Smalling sometimes needs to get out of here. I don't see him right now. What's that? Oh, okay. All right. Is there anybody that needs to give a report quickly and vamoose? Otherwise, I will do it alphabetically. All right. Shirley, we'll start with Hair Medical.
Okay. I think we had probably the shortest committee meeting in history. We lasted 11 whole minutes and got all of our business taken care of. So my report will be fairly short. Report on the Air Medical Work Group, Eric Epley, that we do have the MOU that's been crafted through EMTF. Eric Epley will be contacting the CEOs of the programs, the companies, in the next couple of weeks just to discuss the MOU with those folks or whoever's going to sign that contract, and then in another week or so he'll get those out for signatures, and so we will have that accomplished. A long time coming, but it's it should be done hopefully in the next month or so. We had been asked a good while back to look at the possibility of having students, paramedic students or basic students, do some of their training in the surrounding states where it was easier to find a location to get their training done. We had asked about that. Joe gave us a report that he actually is working with some of the EMS state directors surrounding Texas to work on a compact type agreement or contract. Actually, that is being looked at nationwide. So it will take a legislative change, which won't happen the next session, but hopefully, in a few years we'll be able to do that and make it easier for our students to get their clinical rotations done. And then basically just the report on the trauma systems registry and the progress on the formatting of reports. So that's pretty much it for us. Thank you.
Wow. Any questions for our medical committee? Okay. Cardiac care committee, then we will move on up.
Hello, my name is Catherine Bissell. Dr. Smalling is knee-deep in celebration as his daughter is graduating from UT. Dr. David Peirce chaired the committee but had to leave directly for Houston, so tag I'm in. And so the committee met yesterday in the afternoon, and we did have a quorum. We started out with a report by Lonnie Den looking at Mission Lifeline Action Registry report, which looks at AMI patients across the state. Lots of great information was presented. Specifically, a couple points we pulled out is Texas seems to have longer ED dwell times. However, it doesn't seem to affect our door-to-balloon time. So we're right in line with the nation as far as what our door-to-balloon times are for STEMI patients. Also, we have a higher incidence of in-hospital clinical events like cardiogenic shock. However, we can correlate that with a higher incidence of patients in our state that have comorbid conditions like hypertension and diabetes. So also we had a report from Carla Granato on the DSHS-CV Disease Council interface. She talked about working 4 different ways to obtain data. She's working with ACC to obtain raw data from that action registry to obtain that raw data. Also with Duke Clinical Research to obtain a statewide Mission Lifeline report like the one we reviewed yesterday in the Cardiac Care Committee. She's also working with Quintiles to get with the guidelines data to obtain stroke data. And then this week, the RACs can expect to receive a contract with some deliverables looking for RAC-based stroke and cardiac data. We talked about the web portal. We will be adding a disclaimer to the resource documents section of the Cardiac Committee webpage. Basically, we put a lot of information up there, especially research documents, and we don't want anybody that might be on the website to think that anybody on the committee or DSHS actually endorses the material. We're just presenting that for it to be a resource to anybody who'd like to go to the webpage. We had a demonstration of the Stop STEMI web application. And then finally, Dr. Peirce presented an American Heart Association position paper, and it talked about how CMS and payment strategies are creating potential conflicts of interest for resuscitated CPR patients being taken directly to the cath lab. So the research shows that there's a population of patients that benefit greatly from being taken directly to the cath lab, not stopping in the ER. And what physicians are seeing is that if the patient has a bad outcome, it actually goes against the physician, which is causing the physician to not want to continue that therapy of care. And so it brings me to the action item from the Cardiac Care Committee. They would like to have a meeting of cardiac care, EMS, and EMS medical directors to meet and work together to advise GETAC on making a statement regarding conflict of interest in taking resuscitated patients to the cath lab. So Dr. Peirce and Dr. Smalling will probably be reaching out to EMS and EMS medical directors so that way we can have a meeting before the next GETAC council.
I think you just did that, and I think we just agreed.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I chair the medical directors, Dudley chairs the EMS. We just nodded at each other. We all agree. I think we all had very similar discussions. It's a very complicated problem. It doesn't work just against the physician, but against the facilities, and then everyone's all in favor of transparency and data, but that can certainly be misinterpreted. And what Dr. Peirce brings up is there's a disincentive to take care of high-risk patients. And there's not a straightforward answer. But I think having a joint committee meeting is a good idea, and it seems like we just approved that.
Great.
Or isn't anyone opposed to that?
I do have one request, and that's that you would include Air Medical in that.
Okay.
We do a lot of direct cath lab admits, so I would like you to include Air Medical in that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? That's the end of my report.
I have a question. With the new recommendations being EMS contact to intervention, not door to balloon, when are we going to start measuring that? And how is that going to affect the database?
So with the Mission Lifeline report, we are measuring.
You mentioned the data. We do have ED dwell times, but the door to balloon time is still within the standard or expected, whatever it is. I don't know what to call it. But I know the new recommendation came out last year that we stop measuring door to balloon and measure EMS to intervention time.
First medical contact.
First medical contact, thank you. So are we changing that, or is Mission Lifeline looking at changing that measurement?
So they are looking at that. So that's one of the data points that we looked at yesterday. We do have some room for improvement. Transfer in, transfer out, or first door to intervention. We lag a little bit behind the nation. And so within the RACs, we all need to kind of develop our plan and what our STEMI systems of care will look like. But yes, all that data was reviewed. And regionally, there's 7 RACs that are actually receiving the Mission Lifeline regional report, which looks at just all the hospitals and EMS agencies within their region. And so they can develop a plan off of that data too. So good question.
And you also meant to talk about the STEMI Texas 2014 and the Texas Cardioneurology Conference, right? Just so everybody knows, these flyers are out there and available. Some educational opportunities coming up in the fall.
Thank you for bringing that up.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Education Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Education Committee met on April 4th as well as yesterday. We started our April 4th meeting with a moment of silence for the mass shooting at Fort Hood. We only had 3 agenda items. 2 of those were actually related, and one was to consider National Highway Traffic Safety Administration EMS education competence and standards for AEMT that were adopted in 2012 and Texas Intermediate, and how it affects the practice of those who are currently certified receiving, for the I-85 or I-99, which are the 2 separate curriculums that we use to train EMS personnel. The other portion was to start to define the additional and alternative training required for Texas certified EMTIs, whether they were under I-85 or I-99 curriculum, to be able to transition to AEMT. Jay Cloud has that project, and Jay's done a great job. He actually did a lot of research because there were some components missing for those people. If they went through an I-85 course to be certified as an AEMT, there's some pieces in transition that are missing. And Jay's done a great job of tracking those down. Unfortunately, Jay could not be here yesterday or today, so we're going to move this discussion to our next meeting. There are some things that we want a lot of input from a lot of people to look at, if this is right for Texas, if it's right for us to move, and how we're going to move. So we're going to move that to our next meeting. Item 3 was review the community health curriculum for advanced practice paramedic or advanced community paramedic, and to start the recommendations. When this was written for an agenda item, the last section of that says, consider recommendation for its adoption in Texas. And I can tell you that we are nowhere near looking at adoption for that yet. We've met on our April 4th meeting. We had about 26, 27 people there. It was a great meeting to be a work group meeting with a lot of discussion. Pretty much everybody in the room was saying, yep, let's go. So some of the caveats with let's go is that we're going to take our time. We're looking at this to be probably a 3 to 5 year implementation time because we want a lot of input from a lot of people. And what are we going to call it? One of the things we don't want to do is to get caught up in the minutia, but yet to move forward with what we need in Texas and what this will look like in Texas with input from a lot of folks. So we've actually had a lot of emails. Kelly Weller and Mr. Cloud, again, have stepped up to handle this one. And they've gotten a lot of folks together via emails, and we'll be sending a lot of notices to them for work groups and get implementation from a lot of folks. We've had some input yesterday from Chief Seals. I think he's still here from Dallas, saying, yeah, they want in. What can they do? Everybody's going to have a piece of this. This is not just the Education Committee. This is a voluntary process. There's no thought about making this a mandatory certification level, whatever we end up calling it. It's really too early for us to even give it a name yet, but I'm looking for support from each and every one of you here. We also, I want to thank Dishes for getting the letter posted yesterday to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. We've had a lot of colleges and universities and programs who've been waiting for that, and it is posted on the website, and I've had a couple of colleges send me emails saying thank you. So thank you all for getting that posted from the last meeting. Our next meeting will be Friday, July 18th here in Austin at 4800 Shaw Lane in the main building in classroom 2. We have also added our portion of the strategic plan to the agenda for that meeting also. So we'll finish up hopefully intermediate or AEMT, continue working on advanced practice, and start our first session with strategic planning.
Okay. Any questions?
Jody, is there a document for those who don't understand the variations of intermediate curriculum and now the advanced DMT for either medical directors or others in the room who may not understand the complexities of what that means?
Yeah, there are, if you go to the National Registry website, you can actually see what an AEMT is and what the proposal is. You can also look at the I-85 and I-99 curriculum and see what those are. And when you look, one of the big gaps is that If we look at what we've been teaching in Texas, probably the biggest gap is intubation is not part of that AEMT curriculum. So somehow we've got to get that one added in, either in transition or CE, or we'll figure out how we're going to do that when we get the group together.
I just want to make sure that the complexities we have in Texas, that all EMT intermediates were not educated the same way, but yet they're all viewed equal. Right. And I think that's a concern to some, especially medical directors, that aren't aware of any of this, that are obviously usually not here at meetings.
It is, and I think that's why we have had to take all those complexities together, because depending on which curriculum you trained under, when you see that patch that says intermediate, it doesn't necessarily mean you're an I-85 or I-99 or you're an AEMT. And it is very confusing, and that's why we've got to get together to figure out how we're going to make this work in Texas so that when someone does see an intermediate, they know what that means.
Okay. Any other questions for Jody or the Education Committee? And one of our action items is number 2. Sorry, I said number 3 a little while ago. Number 2 is review the letter from GETAC to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. Is this the letter, sir?
Actually, it is, and actually this was the same letter that we voted on the last time in the meeting. So actually, I'd like to ask that we take that item off the agenda. It's already been taken care of.
Okay, so one less item. That's always a good thing. So just so everybody understands, the issue was that there was a ruling that associate's degrees could be less than they used to be. I'm going to trip over the exact hours.
Yeah. It was looking at all associate degrees in Texas would be 60 hours, and all bachelor's degrees would be 120. For those of you who weren't here, this came about as more of a funding issue. We have a lot of people out there with 70, 80, 90, 100, 150, 200 hours with no degree, yet still getting funds for school, still getting loans. So they were trying to cap that. In looking at trying to make some programs work, many programs are going to have to cut anywhere from 8 to 12 hours out of their programs to get down to 60, and we felt like there should be an exemption. That if you need 68 hours to get it done instead of 60 to make sure you have competency, fine. A&M had a couple of engineering programs that are at 127, and they said, we have no plans to cut this down to 120 because we need competency. So we just want to let the Higher Education Coordinating Board know that we were in favor of programs leaving their hours as they felt like they should be so they could deliver a competent product.
Okay. So if anybody needs a resource, it is now on the web. It says that some people need more than 60 hours. All right. Okay. All right. EMS committee. We didn't get to hear from you much yesterday, Dudley.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. If it's any consolation, I was trained under the EMT special skills curriculum, so I didn't have an intermediate anything. We just had junior high, for crying out loud. But anyway. I was about 2,000 feet over the top of the hotel when the meeting started yesterday. I'd like to thank Chief Tammy Kaye for chairing in my absence. I did get here as quick as I could, and I was going to have Tammy give the report this morning, but she's mysteriously come up with some problem she's off handling. So, the EMS committee met yesterday afternoon at 2:30. Had a number of things on the agenda. Some of the big ones, we reviewed the local project grant process and guidelines. That actually came up to us from some EMS agencies and some vendors both in February, that the pricing guidelines in the local project grant were just a touch off and they hadn't been updated in a number of years. Mr. Schmieder took that information in February and was actually able to give a report that even for the upcoming local project grant process that'll be hitting the streets here in a couple of weeks, those prices have been updated, and there's been some changes to that process that will allow you to go above and beyond your match to get the product that you actually want, and that you're asking for those grant funds for. So that was really good news. They're going to also update those prices annually to try to keep them with the market and kind of where the industry is going. And then they've also put a little bit of a priority in there that things that do with provider safety this year will be high priority items in the local grant project, which I think is really a great direction to take that grant process. We also looked, we were approached by some providers between the two meetings about some issues that a couple of agencies in Texas were having with service animals, and about the ability to carry service animals or the need to carry service animals on EMS vehicles. And so we're going to be looking at some best practices between now and August and trying to come up with something that we can provide as guidance for agencies across the state as they deal with this issue. Most times agencies don't deal with this until somebody's saying, I want my service animal to go along. And with changes in the ADA and things in recent years, there are some requirements there that some folks may not be aware of. So we'd like to get this out to them as soon as we can so that they have a little bit, medical directors, EMS directors have a little bit of guidance on exactly how that's supposed to operate, and some of the best practices that other folks have learned across the country. You heard in Ms. Guerrero's report about the report to the legislature. One of the things the EMS committee was excited about was that HHSC, the medical board, and DSHS agreed that the work that the EMS committee did last fall in producing a report of the stakeholders and how we could further reduce fraud in our industry. Although they took a number of items out of that for their own individual recommendations of those three agencies, they did agree to, and when you pull up that report, there's an attachment, there's an appendix to it, Appendix A, and it's the report of the GETAC EMS subcommittee in total attached to that report to the legislature. So I think that is something that GETAC can be proud of. We went out, we worked with your guys' guidance and your guys' approval, and we're able to get something out there that it was such an outpouring of support from the stakeholders that they decided to attach it in total along with their own recommendations. Got some updates yesterday on the rulemaking the rule revision process from EMSC. I'll let them talk about that as we get closer to their reports. Let's see. I think that's. We also had Dr. Purse present on the cath lab issue, so we're in 100% agreement with that. And I think that was it, unless there's any questions for the EMS committee.
Any questions? I do have a comment to go along with the fraud and abuse. We did find out yesterday there was an email that came out from the Texas Medical Board that for the first time ever there has been a sanction under Chapter 197 of the Texas Medical Board. It is directly from the new language that we helped to craft about fraud and abuse. So we don't like to see people get in trouble, but at the same time, if they're not doing the right thing, then they probably should get in trouble. I guess I just put that got recorded on the internet for that. But our efforts have paid off. So what we're doing does seem to make a difference. Your committee report being part of the big report and then seeing action it's a good thing, even if what
and
it's about it's a bad thing.
I think there's been questions. I think Ms. Guerrero's gotten questions from the legislature off of some of that, and there was a lot of work in the last legislative session to address that I think has been successful. And so, I don't want to say that we've got the issue beat down. I think people always try to find a way to get around the law if they think there's an easy buck there. But I think the industry is much more awake and aware of the issues affecting that. So.
Yes, and if
we were not going to meet before our August meeting, but due to the work yesterday with the strategic plan, the EMS committee will be meeting in between. So for all those guys already back at home watching me going, what? We'll decide on that meeting date here in the next couple of weeks and get it published. It'll probably be late June or mid-July sometime.
Okay, and we will talk about the strategic trauma or the trauma system plan in a little bit, yeah, and why people are talking about extra meetings. All right. Any other questions? No. Okay. Injury prevention.
The Injury Prevention Committee had a workday meeting on May the 2nd in Corpus Christi. This was hosted by the Coastal Bend RAC. And then we had a regularly scheduled meeting on Wednesday. And on Wednesday, we had presentations from Dr. Metzger and Aaron Cater with DSHS on the trauma registry. And like everyone else, we are very excited about the improvements and the quality of the data in the trauma registry. We also had some updates on the work groups that are developing the recommendations for hospital-based injury programs. Again, these are not going to be these are voluntary recommendations. They're not going to ask for rule changes or anything like that. But we're also developing materials to accompany those recommendations. Our plan is to have those, a final draft, hopefully by our August GETAC meeting, and then be able to present that to the council for endorsement at the November GETAC meeting. Our committee also voted to approve a workforce development position statement for injury prevention, and we will make that available. An action item will be that we'll make that available to the council for your approval and endorsement at the August GETAC meeting. We also heard some information about a website that is being developed for the state of Texas by the University of North Carolina Injury Prevention Research Center. They have some lapsing money, and they have developed a kind of a one-stop shop best practices website for the state of North Carolina on where you can go for best practices injury and violence prevention policies. They'd like to see it. They'd like to see each state have something like this, and they had some lapsing money, and they called and asked if Texas would like to be the first state after North Carolina. So they're working on that for us. We just have to supply the narrative for them and things like that, and then keep it updated if things change within our laws and things like that. We also have a workday meeting planned for July the 25th in Fort Worth. We'll get information about that. The location will probably be JPS, but we're working on that. We'll get information out in the next few weeks about that. We plan to try and finalize our injury program recommendations, and also we'll be discussing the GETAC and reviewing the GETAC strategic plan.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is EMS Medical Director Committee, which is me. We met yesterday with a quorum. We used all of our time, so Shirley, thank you for the time. We actually had very good, robust discussions. We only had one action item come out of it, though. We spent quite a bit of time with Dr. Peirce discussing the issue about post-arrest PCI. The committee, I think, feels pretty strongly that that needs to be addressed, although we're not sure how. So we look forward to the joint meeting. We spent a fair amount of time talking about different modes of transportation and the different challenges in determining what's emergency versus non-emergency and what's an appropriate mode of transportation, and we will discuss that further. The one action item we had was actually a reaffirmation of a previous statement. It's kind of, in the past, GETAC had named the EMS Medical Director representative to the Council as the state of the EMS state, and I think we used Medical Director at the time, but actually what we have recommended is that the EMS Medical Director representative to the Council will be seen as the EMS State Medical Advisor, and Dr. Beeson is that person. Unfortunately, there was also a recommendation that there be a backup, and that was the chair of the committee, so I got caught up in my own web. So the committee recommends and offers to DSHS Dr. Beeson as the EMS State Medical Advisor, and myself as the alternate to represent the state in venues where it's necessary. This goes back to previous discussions we've had about state medical directors, to the ACEP report card, where one of the criticisms was that Texas does not have a state medical director. We still don't feel like a state medical director makes sense in a delegated practice state, but we felt that we needed to step up and have a medical advisor available to DSHS. I'm not sure if the council really needs to take action on that. It's not on the agenda anyway, but it's really a reaffirmation. We had previously designated that Dr. Beeson's spot anyway. So that was really our action item. Any questions for me? Okay. Next is the Pediatric Committee. Here it comes.
Hi, Charles Macias. So our committee met on Wednesday the 14th. We had a quorum and did in fact use up all of our time. Critical elements of our discussion were first a continuation of the discussion on our position paper looking at minimizing CT radiation for children, the issue of course being CT radiation in children leading to inordinate number of cancer deaths. We have enhanced and changed our strategy from prior discussions. We were going to bring issues to the council for vote. We've decided to instead continue to look at options for linking professional societies, best quality improvement practices, creating space on the website that is hosted by EMSC State Partnership, and then at which time all of that evolves to rules revisions that are due in 2017. We're hoping to have these come back to the council within the next 3 meetings. So give us a lot more time for a lot more granular approach to this issue. So I requested that we have some agenda item for this session. We won't need that. The next agenda item was within arm's reach, so somewhat related to this particular project. This was a project presented by Connie Manley from the Valley Regional Medical Center, looking at 18-month data of 1,000 children with head and face injury with 2 components. One, looking at minimizing unnecessary CT radiation, and the second part really looking at this concept of keeping children in arm's reach as an injury prevention project to decrease the number of total traumatic brain injury incidents available in English and Spanish. So we're also working with the EMSC State Partnership to move some of these materials and make those available throughout the state as a quality improvement strategy, but also had requested that we look at data related to that, as they've taken some quality improvement initiatives, and we'd like to see what impact that had in decreasing numbers to see if there are opportunities for dissemination through our committee as well. That was followed by an EMS for Children State Partnership update by Sam Vance, 3 critical issues there. The first is an update on the Pediatric Facility Recognition Program. I briefly described this in our last meeting to the council in that report. We've had, the committee is working with the state partnership in assessing the practicality of a pediatric facility recognition program. That would be a completely volunteer program. This is not a credentialing program, but rather looking for readiness for pediatric care in different tiers. There are a couple of states that whose best practices were described that have led to significant improvement in outcomes and have had great appeal. So we're exploring some of that with those groups. We've had, the group has had approval by the Texas Pediatric Society and ENA as well. A couple of other professional societies are currently entertaining the proposal. I think we'll have, I just want to keep the committee, the council updated on the progress of the recognition program, at which time a more specific program with an assessment survey body is described and where an implementation strategy is described, then we'll bring that back to the council at that time for approval. The second big pediatric issue was the National Pediatric Readiness Project regional, I'm sorry, I said that incorrectly, that we have actually a couple of items. One of them was EMSC Week, the 30th anniversary of the EMSC program nationally. There's a new logo that is being partnered with outreach here in the state. The state partnership has had a very aggressive granular support to local agencies, and I think this has been a very positive thing of the state partnership. And then there was discussion on the Pegasus project, which is an EMS evidence-based guideline set. And this was for spinal immobilization, shock anaphylaxis, and airway management to be implemented in Houston this fall and in 6 New England states in the spring. And so that was simply just an update, also an update on EMS Clinical Guidelines Project, being done nationally. This is a project targeting 40-plus conditions for pre-hospital settings, so just wanted to update on that. We've tabled a couple of issues related to the state emergency assistance registry, as well as a discussion on standardized quality metrics, looking at strategies that have been defined by both EMSC, National Quality Forum, ENA, and Children's Hospital Association. So just an update from that perspective. We'll have more to talk about in the next session. And then our final element was a discussion of the trauma registry, and we viewed some of the reports that were on the pediatric template. So we've given charge to all our members to view those with quite a bit of rigor, and because we find those very, very useful. That's data that we've never been able to access before, so we're very pleased with that work. Questions?
Any questions? And actually, Sam's behind you. Did you want to add, you're on the agenda as well as an update for EMSC? Would you like to follow, and we can stay in the same? Sure. And then see if there's any questions for either one of you.
Good morning. My name is Sam Vance. I'm the program manager of the EMS for Children program. Just to add a little bit to what Dr. Macias has already told you, next week is EMS week, if you're not aware of that. And this is the 30th anniversary of the National EMS for Children program. To celebrate that, we have done several things for EMS week this next week, including we had a contest to draw a new logo for us for the state of Texas to kind of personalize it to Texas. We put that out to a vote amongst our listserv and actually received several hundred votes on this. And the winner is Reagan Olson. She is from Hunt County EMS. We will be presenting that award and unveiling our new logo up in Greenville, Texas next Monday night, May the 19th at 6:30. They are actually having a large community event and also for kids and whatnot, and they are actually having the Dallas Mavericks cheerleaders, the Dallas Mavericks mascot present at this event. Then on Wednesday of EMS week is always EMS for Children Day. We have received a gubernatorial proclamation of Wednesday, May 21st as EMS for Children Day in Texas. That will be presented by Representative Donna Howard on the south steps of the state capitol at 10:30 a.m. You're all welcome to attend. Then on Friday, May 23rd, we will be presenting our annual EMS for Children Crew of the Year Award. This year, the award goes to a crew from Marble Falls EMS and the Horseshoe Bay Fire Department, and that will be presented at 10 a.m. at Quail Point Lodge in Horseshoe Bay, Texas. So that's really all I have to add to what Dr. Macias has already told you. I don't know if you have any questions.
Any questions or comments for either of our pediatric colleagues? Nothing?
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is the Stroke Committee. Dr. Rutledge.
Thank you. We didn't meet last time because it conflicted with the International Stroke Committee and we couldn't meet a quorum. So unfortunately I have a longer report this time for you guys. We met Wednesday, and one of the things that happens at our meeting is we receive a report from the Texas Council of Cardiovascular Disease and Stroke. They're the group that oversees prevention, acute care, and chronic care at the DSHS and reports to the legislature. An update from them was the Million Heart Stakeholders Workshop was held on May 1st, and they're specifically focusing on quality improvements in regards to hypertension control, which makes sense. If you treat hypertension, you prevent strokes, heart attacks, and we have less EMS runs in that regard. The TCCVDS is also with Department of State Health Services. They're looking at a PAC grant for school health programs. From the Rider 97 money, they've hired a health advisor and an epidemiologist. Lone Star Stroke Research Consortium gave a presentation, and they're still working on contracting with the DSHS. And the American Heart Association spoke, and they're currently in the process of developing a legislative agenda, which should hopefully include GETAC as well, because we want more funding. In regards to the RAC data collection work group, we had a presentation by Carla Grendo. The contracts go out to the RACs next week for that. And again, this is different from the trauma registry. This is looking at stroke and STEMI care from two aspects, from sort of a RAC-centric EMS standpoint, and then from the hospital certified standpoint through Get With The Guidelines by the American Heart Association. Our plan is to have this data for us August. And the reason we need some data quickly is to make appeals to the legislature to try to get more funding for all of us. That data will come to you guys. It'll also go back to the RACs. It'll be correlated in a RAC-centric approach, but also in a legislative district approach. And so my hope is that will give us some ammunition, gap analysis to make arguments why we need more funds. Let's see. Something else I was going to tell you about that. Oh, the process, the way I've always thought about the legislature is that it starts the first year, but that's not true. The reason we want the data in August is many of the things happen in the fall. But the committees are already starting to meet. And the Appropriations Committee is actually starting to meet in June. And I'll be speaking at that. And again, obviously we want some money. Next up is the EMS Stroke Education Program Work Group met. And we've been droning on about this a long time with you guys and brought it up many times. And we actually have an action item or recommendation that's finally come out of that subgroup. To remind you guys, Texas Administration Code, Rule 157.133, basically states that stroke patients will be cared for by healthcare professionals with documented education and skill in the assessment and care of stroke throughout the pre-hospital and hospital course. Well, basically from that, our recommendations to this committee is that that be accomplished through EMS recertification by requiring 4 hours of stroke-specific content over the 4 years. Those hours are not to be taken or to be taken from or added to the general content time and assigned stroke-specific content. The recommendation is not to add any additional hours to recertification, but to assure that that stroke certification is done.
Could you say that again?
Yes.
Your recommendation is?
Recommendation is that the EMS certification require up to 4 hours of stroke-specific content continuing education. That's for the 4-year recertification cycle.
Okay. It's not on our agenda, so we actually cannot
discuss it.
So
it can be a discussion and then move on. But that's our recommendation to this committee to start that process.
Yeah, we can put it on the next meeting's agenda, but that wording up to 4 means 0 is adequate.
Right. Minimum of.
A minimum of 4.
Okay. And that will be a very robust discussion, I can promise you.
Dr. Rutledge, when you say up to 4, are we talking 4 for EMT, 3 for paramedic? Was there any?
No, so yeah, they had those discussions. I think HD had those discussions with you, and we talked about it various ways. And then when that committee came back, they just said 4 hours for the 4 years was their final recommendation.
Okay.
And obviously this is a stroke-centric point of view, but we are required to have some stroke education. I think it's how we go about doing it, and I agree with you. That's certainly something that would be, a way to look at it.
Sure.
What was the rest of the recommendation? Again, it sounded, I couldn't tell if you meant it was in addition to what's already required or to take place of.
The work group's recommendation is that would be in lieu of existing general content time and assigned to stroke-specific content time. That is, there would be no additional hours requested in the recertification.
Okay.
And she's got it written out where I didn't fumble over the words.
Okay. And we'll have to we'll put that on the council agenda for our next meeting. And I think that should also be assigned to the medical director committee and maybe the education committee as well.
Absolutely.
Do you agree?
Agree.
And any other committees you think should look at that? Okay. Did I hear something? You want it? Okay. All right.
Okay, so next up was the Transport Bypass Work Group. That's Dr. Craven. With the RAC contract that's just gone out, transport plans from each of the RACs will be coming back, and we'll correlate those and try to make some references for people based on that information that's coming back. Then we had a couple of discussion items that I hope to also have for discussion items for the next time as well. One is with this Rider 97 money, one of the things that's going to happen is the certified stroke hospitals, there'll be a database from the Get With The Guidelines that comes up to become a stroke designated hospital in our state. You have to participate in some database, and our recommendation is going to be that this Get With The Guidelines Rider 97 database that's being put forward be the recommended database for designation in our state. Not a requirement, but the recommendation. So that came up. Next, in our state, we have 3 tiers of stroke centers. Comprehensive stroke centers, primary stroke centers, and support stroke facilities. We've based certification on the Brain Attack Coalition's recommendations for the primary stroke centers and the comprehensive stroke centers. For support stroke facilities, Tier 3, TTAF has put together a really good program for certification for those. But we have several other agencies, the Joint Commission, DNV, HFAP, that are all looking to also do certification of stroke support facilities or support stroke facilities, which are also called stroke-ready hospitals. There's now been published Brain Attack Coalition standards for stroke-ready hospitals, and we had discussion, and it will be our recommendation that we use the BAC standards for these as we did for primary center and stroke center certifications, and so that needs to be a discussion item for next time. We also had a presentation by Evan Allen. He's from Florida and has done, he's an MBA neurologist that's done economic analysis of transport plans, and it was a very robust discussion. And what's very interesting is he's shown the cost effectiveness of transport bypass for strokes, which we were the second state. I think Florida was the first state to have transport to the highest level of stroke centers. Our public comments also included the Texas Cardiology Neurology Conference by TTAF, September 26th, Hyatt Lost Pines, and our next meeting will be in August as yours. So that's my report. Do you have questions?
Okay, so for the next council agenda, for this council, you have 3 items?
Yes, I would like to do 3 items.
The 4 hours for stroke education and EMS?
Correct.
Rider 97, Get With The Guidelines recommendation?
No. The next one would be using the American Hospital Association hospital database as a recommended instrument for stroke center designation in our state.
Okay.
I'll say it again.
And you'll-
The American Hospital Association, get with the guidelines, hospital database, be used as a recommended instrument for state stroke center designation.
Okay.
Okay. Get what the guidelines? American Heart, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
American Heart Association.
Gotcha.
And then the third was using the Brain Attack Coalition standard for stroke-ready hospitals as the basis for certification of support stroke facilities or Tier 3 facilities in our state.
Okay. All right, we got it.
Yeah.
All right. Any
Good.
questions for Dr. Rutledge?
Dr. Refuge, your speaker that you had on the
Can you speak to the mic?
Yes.
He was phenomenal.
Thank you.
I from a layperson, I thoroughly enjoyed. I don't know if it was your idea to bring him in to speak, but I would have loved for anybody to hear that. He
Well,
was very
it-
concise. He was excellent.
We can thank TTAF. It's available on YouTube, online, to look at it. What I like about him is his practicality, and there's the Texas idiom, money talks and bullshit walks, and a lot of this goes back to money, and how do we get money to make GETAC go? How do we make money for the RACs to go? How do we make stroke care cost effective for people? And I think that's what he basically drew down to and pointed out.
And where would people need to go to find that his talk? Because I really think anybody who's interested in stroke, the bypass, they should hear that. Because I'm just a public member, but I found his talk so concise, so important, that it would be a wonderful thing for everybody to hear.
Well, if anyone wants to email me, I can send them the PowerPoint. If you go to the TTAF website, I believe you can get to the recordings for these meetings and hear that as well.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, sir. Trauma systems?
Good morning. How are you all?
We're
Can't talk?
wonderful.
So our committee did meet yesterday. We had a presentation by DAR. We found that very enlightening. Hope to work better and closer with that group. And then we had our work groups. We have a trauma medical director best practice work group. Dr. Eastridge chairs that. They provided a report. There were no action items from that particular work group. We also talked about our trauma registry work group. This is the group that's working with the state registry to try to create reports that are more meaningful. And I have to say, I think this group is moving forward. In the beginning, the meetings were extremely controversial. The last meeting was almost boring. We are moving forward. We do have data. We obviously want more data, but I really have to commend Chris Drucker and Christy Metzger. They have been really wonderful to work with. If you look at the PowerPoint presentation from yesterday's meeting, you will see that there's more data available to us. They also had a wonderful EMS PowerPoint that Chris Drucker did. They specifically looked at RACD. They sent it to me on a Friday, and I asked if I could have that data for the entire state. I had it by Monday. So again, they're working really hard to try to meet our needs. So there's a non-physician provider, that's our PAs and nurse practitioner work group. We've asked them to identify various roles in the trauma program, in the resuscitation, the OR, the ICU, through the continuum of care, and create language that should be in the job descriptions as well as the requirements for education and credentialing and skills development. We also have a trauma registrars work group. That work group has been asked to do the same thing, come up with common language for job descriptions, organizational structure, and potentially a career ladder that could be recommended for the registrars. There is a RAC development work group. That group is kind of on hold to find out what the ACS survey, the outcome of that is going to be. And then we also talked about the system PI. Many of you know that we did pass a systems PI document, a plan, in 12, and it was supposed to go live in 14. That's still on hold, partly because of the registry and partly because of the ACS survey. We also had an update from Texas TQIP. Most of you know at the last meeting we did ask if we could begin to look at that. Matt Davis has been our champion. He's the medical director at Scott & White. We do know that it's going to cost $12,000 for the current hospitals that are participating to be able to create a Texas TQIP, and essentially what that does, we submit data to the data bank, and TQIP gives us, Parkland, back a report. What it would be different is in a Texas model or a state model is that it would give us back all the hospitals that participate in TQIP from Texas in one grouping, so it would be like one big hospital that we could compare to the other hospitals that are participating. So we could begin to look at how our outcomes measure compared to the other outcomes. And then we had an update from Jane about the ACS trauma system, so obviously that's on hold. There was a topic course that was offered on Wednesday. There were 45 people in that class, so I think bringing those classes to the GETAC meetings is working. And then I just want to say a few words about Ram Perez. Ram, as you guys know, passed away this last month. He was a great colleague. He's in this trauma system for over 20 years. I remember when I first met him, and I wondered where Sonora, Texas was. And then I had the opportunity to do their site survey there, and I realized what a small hospital that was, and their elevator was still the old cage type. I was very concerned about going up in that elevator. But they made their hospital become a level 4 trauma center thanks to Ram Perez, and then maintained that for a number of years. So he really needs to be commended and remembered as well. Can I answer any questions? There were no action items for our committee. We're going to continue to move forward. We met with Brian and the strategic planning, and we will be planning a full, probably 2-day meeting that will probably be in San Antonio, Austin, or Galveston in July. And the purpose will be to have the work groups have the opportunity to meet and then go into some of the strategic planning and come out with some outcomes before Dr. Eastridge leaves us to go back into the war environment. Any questions?
Any questions for Jory? And a number of us and speakers have talked about strategic planning. Remember, we're doing 2 strategic plans right now. One is actually for the council, but the one everybody has been referring to today is the EMS and trauma strategic plan for the state. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We actually will have a presentation from DARS in just a minute. I'm going to see if TTAF, if Diana would like to present first, or if she's on the agenda first. Come on up. Actually, DARS is an off the agenda item of their state, so I think we can consider him public comment. How's that?
I never think of Jory as being taller than me, but her shoes are taller than me, I think, today. Good morning. I'm Dinah Welsh with TTAF, and thank you for the opportunity to visit with y'all. A few things that I wanted to cover today have already been touched on, and one of them that has really taken a lot of our time in the last several weeks is figuring out funding and the tobacco funding issue. We've spent a great deal of time trying to track back how that happened, but now really working to move forward on how we make sure that we get additional funds once the legislature meets back in January. As Dr. Rutledge talked about, the legislature doesn't meet until January, but the work is, we are full throttle from here till the end of May next year. And one of the big things we have that is always a need is data. And so we're trying to quantify our numbers instead of just going to the legislature saying we need more, what we have is not adequate, what is more? And so we're working with the EMS Alliance and the RAC EDs to get some quantifiable numbers that we can then present to the legislature on what we need as far as dollars. TTAF has put out some alerts on the tobacco funding issue and just sort of how things happened and what we know. And so I would encourage you all, if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask me. But also, you can look to our website, and that information's there, and I'm happy to answer any questions on that as well. Running at the same time is the Sunset Advisory Commission, which has also been mentioned, is the examination of the Health and Human Services agencies, including the Department of State Health Services. We're expecting the staff report from the Sunset Advisory Commission to be out any week. It's supposed to be in May, so we don't have much time left. And from that report, then the Sunset Advisory Commission will actually hold hearings in late June, and at that time, we will have the opportunity to testify and report on issues that we have with what they've recommended or things that they didn't recommend that we think they should be doing. So the next month and a half will certainly be very busy in identifying, first of all, what they put in the report, but then, how do we want to react to it as a trauma and emergency healthcare community. TTAF, we have been in discussions with the University of Houston to do a study on the trauma system, sort of focusing on funding. So this, again, runs with all the other discussions that we're having with tobacco funds and Sunset, and it's just another layer which we think will help to focus and intensify our ask for additional funds. And we hope TTAF hopes to be able to get that contract signed in the next week and be able to start moving forward with that. That University of Houston has said that that is a good summer project for them. So we're looking forward to that opportunity. Jory mentioned TQIP. We did have a presentation at our TTAF meeting as well, and Dr. Davis. And the TTAF board is going to be examining taking on that expense of the $12,000 for the statewide reporting. And so in June, our TTAF board will make a final determination on that, hopefully. I think that's the plan from the meeting the other day. And so we'll be reporting that back in August. Just a few other things I want to mention real quick is that TTAF, we've started our EMS webinars again. Joe Schmieder did one for us a week or two ago, and we had record attendance, so thank you to him. Thank you to Kelly Harrell, who has been helping us put those together, as well as a number of programs that we have going on. It's been mentioned, our Neurocardio Conference, September 26th. Hope y'all will be there. And also we're doing with the Panhandle RAC, we're doing a stroke symposium in July. And then also RAC-J, the Permian Basin Health and Safety Conference is going to be August 2nd. And so those flyers are out there. Last thing I want to mention, last two things I want to mention are our Just Drive campaign. We continue to work on that, getting it out statewide. It's hard to be anywhere in this day and age and not have the discussion of distracted driving and texting while driving and how bad that is. We continue to push out our campaign. I want to congratulate RAC A, K, and J, who have done a lot within their regions to promote just driving. And the final thing I want to say is our fundraiser is going to be August 20th. I'm sure all of you will receive lots and lots of information about that in the next several months. It's going to be at the Broken Spoke here in Austin. It's the Wednesday of GETAC, and I think it's going to be really a lot of fun. We've had a change in venue due to the Texas disposal system site, the dump. They've been undergoing some changes, and their general contractor have not given them the green light for us to have an event in August. So we've done a little adjusting. We're all used to Plan B, but we're excited about our event August 20th at the Broken Spoke, and hope y'all will plan to be there. Fun night. Joe Schmieder's already told me he's bringing his dancing boots, so all the more reason to be there.
Yeah. What state did you buy the boots in?
Any questions?
I have a question about TQIP. I thought it was $12,000 per hospital.
No, it is $12,000 for the entire state.
Okay.
The hospitals are already, and I'm going to look to Jory, who's walked out of the room. My understanding is you have TQIP hospitals that already participate, and they have their fee, and then the $12,000 would be statewide And so that is the portion that TTAF is looking at funding.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we're ambitious, but not.
All right. Any questions? Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank y'all very
Thank
much.
you for everything TTAF does.
Thank you.
We're going to break from the agenda, or basically go to public comment, if you will, for Glenn Neal, who is the Deputy Commissioner for Division for Rehabilitation Services, or DAR, as everyone has been referring to. And I think you have a short presentation for us.
I do believe there is a PowerPoint.
And there is a paper copy in your folders of this, as well as it's on the guidebook.
Right. Yes, that's right. Well, good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. It's a privilege to be here with you this morning. My name is Glenn Neal. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Department of Assistive and Rehabilitative Services. I wanted to provide you with just a little bit of information about one of our programs that would be of particular interest to this committee. We're working hard to kind of raise awareness about the Comprehensive Rehabilitation Services program we operate. We met earlier with the Trauma Coordinators Association. Yesterday we presented at the Trauma Systems Committee, Ms. Klein's committee, and so we're here today to sort of reprise our presentation for you. Let's see if I can figure out how to work this. I guess the arrow here is...
Well, it's an Acrobat.
Okay, there we are. Our Comprehensive Rehabilitation Services program provides intensive rehabilitation services for people who have sustained a traumatic brain or spinal cord injury. Our primary goal is to help people live more independently in their communities and regain as much functionality as they can following such an injury. You can see, I won't try not to read to you, but we focus on primary areas of mobility, self-care, and communication skills in the program. It's a fairly small program. There's, for fiscal 14, a budget of $26.6 million. It's general revenue and general revenue dedicated funds. The dedicated part is derived from surcharges on misdemeanor and felony convictions. And there's a little bit of funding from subrogation, which is when we go out to seek reimbursement from insurance insurance claims or lawsuits. I think I highlighted that. The eligibility requirements for the program are that a person, of course, has to have a traumatic brain or spinal cord injury, be at least 15 years old, be a citizen, and be a Texas resident for 6 months, or have a family member who's been here for 6 months. Importantly, they must be medically stable. This is a post-acute service that we provide. And then they must be willing to participate in treatment. These services are time limited, and we'll get to some of those time limits on a later slide. But again, the purpose is to increase the person's ability to function independently and to attend to activities of daily living to prevent secondary disabilities. The service areas for this program include inpatient comprehensive medical, outpatient services, and post-acute traumatic brain injury services. Most of you are familiar with these service arrays. Inpatient comprehensive medical includes therapies and other medical care. These are limited to 90 days. Typically 30 days is what we provide. Outpatient services limited to 120 hours. And here, of course, you're going to find physical, occupational, speech, and other therapies, including cognitive therapy, to help improve their functioning. And then the real sort of focus of the program, and where most of the funding ends up going, is in our post-acute traumatic brain injury services. These are services that are intended to help people sort of reestablish the neural pathways that were disrupted as a result of the injury, and also to help them improve their problem-solving skills, their self-care skills. And most of these services are provided in a residential facility. We have a number of providers around the state Of the 21 providers, I want to say somewhere between 15 and 19 of those are residential, the rest are outpatient. We, as state agency, we operate the program in terms of determining eligibility, medical stability, and a number of other factors you can see there through our counselors. We have vocational rehabilitation counselors statewide who have a partial caseload of comprehensive rehab services. So a person who's injured and who seeks our services would first come to our agency through a referral to one of our counselors, who would then help them navigate the other system, which is outsourced through contracts.
Who can refer, or will you get to that?
Anyone can refer. Families can refer, physicians can refer, hospitals refer. We have referrals from a number of sources. We are quite interested. Obviously, we're here because we believe that trauma systems are a natural referral source for us, and we have seen our referrals slow somewhat in the program. I'll get to some numbers here, I think, maybe in the next slide, in terms of, so you can see that in fiscal 13, we served a little less than 1,000 people. So it's a small program, it's an expensive program. Yes, sir?
You said, I think, 26 million or so is allocated per year.
Correct.
How much is being consumed?
Well, in most years, all of it. We typically have a waiting list for services in the program. Right now, we don't. As I mentioned, this has been an unusual year in that our referrals are down somewhat. We typically have a waiting list all through the year, and we expend usually all of our services. One of the complications is that we're a payer of last resort, and so we have to wait for insurance and other third-party payments to pay, and oftentimes toward the end of the year we end up with a little bit of funding left over. We have carry forward authority from the legislature to carry $1.5 million of that into the next fiscal year, and we often do exercise that option.
Let me ask one other question, too. On your inpatient comprehensive, it says that services usually 30 days, maximum limit is 90 or up to 120 hours. What happens if we get to that point and services are still needed?
Well, the family at that point would have to find other resources for that. If they're ready to move to the next phase of their rehabilitation with us, then we would move them there. In our post-acute brain injury services, some of our providers will provide some similar services there. Okay. I would say that, just as a sort of aside, we are in the midst of a redesign of this program. We're looking at the service array. We're looking at the who do we serve, where do we serve them, and what do we provide? Those big key questions right now, and trying to determine whether the service levels that we currently have set in the program are still appropriate after the number of years that have passed since this program was established in 1991. So those are questions that we'll be wrestling with here shortly.
Thank you.
You can see that about 2/3 of the consumers served in the program have traumatic brain injury. About 1/3 have a spinal cord injury, and a small percentage have both. You can see the racial and ethnic breakdown and the gender breakdown there. And you can see from the average age at application that typically we're serving a younger population. A lot of our consumers have been in car crashes, motorcycle crashes, diving accidents, falls of different kinds. So there's a number of risk takers, I suppose, that we see in the program. I mentioned the outcomes already that we're aiming for with respect to independence and living in the community. We typically measure our success in the program as where a person exits into in terms of their living arrangement. Our goal primarily is to avoid long-term institutionalization of that person in a nursing facility or other facility. And so when they exit into a private residential facility or setting, I should say, we consider that a success. 91% of our consumers in 2013 returned to a private residential setting on exit. I think as part of the redesign, we're going to be looking at other metrics to determine our effectiveness. That's an important one, but it's not the only one we should look at. So we'll be exploring that as well. You can see the costs associated with the program, which accounts for some of the low numbers in terms of how many we see every year. For 2014 so far, we've served 744 consumers. We have about 480 active consumers. We've closed 164 successfully, and this says there are 25 on the waiting list. Right now we don't have a waiting list, so we have capacity, limited capacity, but we have capacity to serve additional consumers this year. Here's some contact information in your presentation. Lindsay Halligan is the program specialist who runs the program for our agency, and she's available to receive referrals, receive questions, provide any information that the council may need or any of the member organizations may need. We did with the Level 1 trauma facilities at the Trauma Coordinators Association. We're working with them to establish liaison relationships with a specific number of our staff around the state to facilitate referrals from those facilities. But Lindsay would be the first line of referral for that. So I'll pause here to see if there are any questions.
Any questions from the group?
Well, again, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for having us here to make the presentation. And if you think of any questions afterwards, contact Lindsay or me. Okay. Be happy to answer.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to jump down to agenda item number 4, which is the review the online medical director's course adapted by NHTSA, developed by NAMSP and the ACEP. I just use my own little acronyms for fun. Joe, can you give us an update on that? How much update you're willing to give us on that?
So we provided it to this committee at the last meeting, and there's been no negative feedback from it, from that. We have submitted the request and received funding to fund 1 year of this program free to any medical director or any EMS provider, but only the medical director will get Con Ed credit or get that requirement, meet that requirement as TMB is put out. That will become available as of September 1st, and it'll run for 1 year. We're in the developing Chapter 8, which is a section on Texas law. And in both cases, there will be a test that you'll have to complete. And it's not hard, but you should be able to pass it. And you'll get a certificate from them.
Okay.
So that's moving along pretty well.
Who is developing the Texas-specific section?
You're probably looking at them.
Okay. We'll talk.
Are you offering help, sir?
Are you? No, I mean, I looked at it. I went through the program, and it's not bad, but most of the states I looked at their Section 8, and it was very minimal. Ours needs to be substantially more than the others.
Well, I would really welcome input, and we want to use Section 8 also as the opening part of the administrative record requirements also.
Yes.
They're very similar in language, saying that you have to understand the system in Texas and the laws and those kind of things. So that would be great, Doctor, if you'd be willing to help on that. Okay.
The other question I have is if the providers choose to do it and it's CME is provided, does that not count if I'm a paramedic or an EMT for my additional, because don't CME hours count for CE for EMS?
Sure it would. And you'll get a certificate, but you won't get the same certificate as you would receive as a doctor would.
Okay.
But yes. It'll be
but if an EMT, paramedic, operator, some certified person in Texas chooses to go through that course, they would be able to count those hours toward their CE and additional contents, because obviously it wouldn't be anything specific medical or pediatric. But.
And I think it will be really helpful, especially for the physician who's using a paramedic or somebody in the service, in the organization, to do some QA and that kind of stuff, to go through the course also.
Sure. Okay.
It's a good course.
Yeah, I think we had looked at it previously. We've previously approved it for TMB or dishes, but whatever process we went through, it is an improved course for 197. If you're looking for help on Section 8 for the state, I think both of us are willing to help.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
And
that
I think
would be fantastic.
And I think any of the doctors from the medical director committee are willing. Just start pulling us in, and so it looks like September 1st is when it becomes available.
Yep, the money's in the contract's going back and forth right now. Once that's done, and with the understanding, and our understanding with them was to make it available as of September 1st for 1 year.
Okay.
And it will be important for this committee and for anyone watching and listening that it comes available September 1st. It's a 1 year guaranteed free. After that, then it's going to cost you about $300 to take the course.
Okay.
Can you check on the turnaround time if we develop the Chapter 8, Section 8 for Texas, how long that takes for them to get that implemented up? And the second thing, can we embed questions in our section like they do some of the other sections as you go through?
And the answer is yes in both. Yes, you can put questions in because we have to develop that to make sure they got the contents. And it's about 2 weeks to put it up.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. And how are we going to let the medical directors in Texas know about this? Because it's one of the things we've been struggling with, I would say, once the rule got changed, as a lot of doctors were saying, nobody told me. And it's not the only thing they say that about, by the way.
So obviously we'll do it through our newsletters and through the GETAC. We're just going to get it out there as loud as possible.
Yeah.
Jane, I don't know if there's another way of getting it out to
Can
them.
Website.
Can we get the medical board to help?
We can certainly ask.
Okay. All right. Okay. This is a good thing. Very good thing.
This is great, yeah. And it's relatively easy from the standpoint that the substance is already done, and it's available not just in Texas, but if someone decides to leave Texas and go someplace else, they can take it with them.
Okay. All right. The council had a strategic planning session on April the 24th. Our facilitator, John Leidecker, was there. Because Chief Riley is not here today, I opted to put that off. Discussion of the strategic plan for the council until our next meeting. I would like to discuss, though, the EMS and trauma strategic planning process. Dr. Eastridge has agreed to head that up and, as we're kind of saying, be the editor of the document.
The scribe.
So I would, if it's okay, I'd like to defer to Dr. Eastridge to give us an overview of the process and our timeline. I'll let everybody know that Chief Riley has been pretty clear, and I think the members of the council are in agreement that we are going to stick with the timeline for completion of the trauma plan, EMS and trauma plan. And Dr. Eastridge, I'm sure, will give the timeline. But we're going to stick to it. It's a deadline of over a year from now, and I'm pretty sure we can get through a 28-page document in a year.
No question.
So
we have been charged by the chair of the council to relook at and redevelop the EMS and trauma strategic plan from a historic context. This was a GETAC mandate developed from a House bill in 2001 that was really meant to assess state emergency medical services and looking for areas to improve emergency medical services in the state. That led to the first strategic plan in 2002. And what that strategic plan does is it set priorities, focused energy and resources, strengthened operations, and really put all the stakeholders working toward a common goal for EMS and trauma. The 2002 plan is actually a very good plan, but it's a bit antiquated. So we have been charged to revise the EMS and trauma strategic plan. We had an initial meeting again in April in which we received the charge. and began our planning process last evening. Again, the context of the plan is to look at the current document and revise it and bring it up to date. So what the specific charges are to group members are to look at it's a 28-page document, to look at the parts of the document that are no longer relevant in the context of the subcommittee or the committee structure, look at those things that are have ongoing relevance, and also new agenda items or new data that needs to be included in the new strategic plan. Although the council itself has plenty of expertise, we thought it best to really involve the committee structure so that we can get down to the granularity and look in depth at all of the subject matter expertise that we have in our committee structure. So we had our first meeting last night with all of the salient trauma related committees present. The timeline is, again, was initiated in April, was informing basically informing the council. Then last night we began the process of informing and sort of tasking the committees with work products. The committees will develop individual agendas for their due outs, and then hope to develop work through this in the time frame that was previously mentioned. So last night we had our initial meetings. In August, we hope that all of the committees will develop basically their agendas on how they're going to evaluate the document and put in their salient subject matter specific points. November, because November with the EMS conference is going to be a busy month, will just be continuation of that work product. February, we will coalesce and present the draft document for initial public comment. In May, we will do the revisions and again present that draft for additional public comment, with the intent that we will produce a finished product for the council to vote on in August of 2015. There are a number of resources that will be disseminated to the council, excuse me, and the committee structure to get the work started. What we hope to, again, some of the references we're going to use to augment the template, including would be the, excuse me, the
I bet there's some like fire person in here that's going to make us leave, right?
Like the hospital, we just ignore it.
How about if we take a break? Okay, how about if we don't take a break? That was not a BS meter. Continue, please.
So, getting called out. All right, so the resources will be we will use the 2002 document as a template. We will, for resources, the committees and council will get a white paper that basically describes the council's charge, the specific timeline, with the intent that we are going to stick to that timeline. The HRSA document on trauma systems, the trauma systems performance and evaluation committee of the ACS, their document, the Texas ACS review, and the individual EMS and trauma agenda from HRSA as basically reference documents to get this process started. The ultimate do-outs of what we want to have at the end of this is not only a comprehensive revision of the strategic plan, but also hope to develop in the process basically a sort of a short form education tool for sort of the elevator speech for legislators or anybody that wants sort of a lowdown on the Texas EMS and trauma system agenda for the future. So that is where we're starting. Any questions?
Any questions for Dr. Eastridge? Does that correlate with those that were at the retreat? Does that go along with what we discussed? And is everybody in agreement with the timeline and that we'll stick firm to the timeline?
We'll get it done.
That's August 2015.
August 2015.
August 2015.
I think we can make that. If we, no doubt we could always stop for one more thing, but I think the most important thing is, since this is, and the intention is for this to be a living document, even though we say we're done August 2015, we're not done. So even though if there are things that are not included,
right,
we still have lots of opportunity going forward to change and fix and
And
amend.
that is the intent of the council, is that this becomes for perpetuity a living document, so that we don't let it go 10 years the next time, so that we can, again, this document could have, potential significant import with respect to future legislation and being a resource for our in our advisory capacity. So we need to keep it up to date with best evidence and what we want our trauma system to look like.
So the 2002 document states that it's a living document. So we need to make sure it's a living document, doesn't go dormant this time.
Exactly.
So we need to have a plan as part of the document to do that.
Yes, I agree with that. I saw that too, and as you read through the 2002 document, it says this was intended to be a living document. And that goes back to the fact that it was a good document. I guess it was our failure to follow through. So, any other comments from the council?
I was just going to say I went back to the office after our meeting, and I did find the original documents from the meeting in Kerrville. And if anybody wants to see some really good Far Side cartoons, well, Dr. Rack had a whole bunch of them in it. So it was an interesting document.
Good.
He had a good presentation. If anybody's interested in seeing the original.
All right. Any other comments? If not, we actually have gone through most of the agenda, except for things like public comments and items for next meeting. So at this time, I'll open up for public comment, not just on the EMS and trauma plan, but on any item. If anyone would like to come up and make public comments. Anyone seeing
no one.
Someone. Welcome, Doug.
Howdy. There's been a lot of talk throughout the meetings over the last couple of days, and I wanted to present it here. During the legislative session, Senate Bill 8 passed, we've talked about it already today, it had a lot of things in there to reduce fraud. But one of the other things it did is it looked at some other areas and in an effort to save the state some money in Medicaid. And one of those was it directed HHSC to develop medical transportation organizations, much like the medical care organizations that a lot of us who work with Medicaid have to work with every day. And this was to replace the medical transportation program and to make it more efficient and to hopefully save the state some Medicaid dollars in transport. The medical transportation program has traditionally not included ambulance transport. But in the making of the rules for these medical transportation organizations, Health and Human Services Commission put together some rules, and they inserted a few definitions and removed some definitions that have some concern to the ambulance transport industry. One of those primarily is they inserted a definition for non-emergency ambulance. And a lot of times throughout our industry, we kind of fight with each other and haggle back and forth over non-emergency versus emergency and private versus public and all that other thing. But the emergency and non-emergency has always been kind of dicey because it's very difficult to figure out what you mean by those words. It could be how the vehicle is operated. Are lights and sirens used, or are lights and sirens not used? It could be how the call is scheduled. It could be the condition of the patient, and it could be how the bill is submitted to the payers. So it always gets real weird when we start using emergency and non-emergency to delineate between something or between different items in our industry. And so Health and Human Services, in an effort, in their words, to take care of a small, very small subset of patients that they have that can move by, or clients, pardon me, that they have that can only be moved by stretcher, either for safety or comfort. And these may be contracted patients, these may be bariatric patients that can't be in a wheelchair, that can't move by any other means, that they have to be moved by stretcher, but they don't have any acute medical need, or they don't meet the common use definition of an ambulance. Their idea is that they would go by this non-emergency ambulance definition of a new type of transport that they're going to put under the Medical Transportation Organization. And the problem is that the rules and the definition of that non-emergency ambulance transport have some very unusual things in there. So in the definition for non-emergency ambulance transport, it says, there it is, that non-emergency ambulance transportation does not include any medical monitoring, medical aid, medical care, or medical treatment during transportation, and no flashing lights, sirens, or emergency equipment is required. And when you really break down and read through the rest of the rules, it's almost like they're saying that it doesn't have to meet the requirements of a DSHS licensed vehicle. So that has the industry very, very concerned, because we've seen a little bit of mission creep in other areas with Medicaid, and our concern is that, first of all, we may be opening the door for folks to come in with a vehicle that will hold a stretcher but does not have any equipment on it. And when DSH, if they're licensed as an EMS transport provider at all, DSHS confronts them. They say, well, this is my MTP non-emergency ambulance. So it doesn't have to have all that stuff. They don't outline, they say you can take an attendant. They don't outline any training for the attendant on the non-emergency ambulance. And then they say you do have to have a first aid kit, but the required equipment in the first aid kit is biohazard cleanup equipment, and nothing about what we're going to be able to do for anybody that would have a medical emergency in this means of transport. The other piece tied to this is several years ago, Texas outlawed what the rest of the country calls gurney cars or stretcher transport. They didn't outlaw transporting somebody who doesn't have a medical problem by stretcher. They just said that it has to be done in a licensed ambulance. So anyway, there's been a lot of concern in the industry. There's been a lot of concern voiced to HHSC, and they're going to be holding a public forum this coming Thursday at 10 o'clock in the morning, the 22nd, at 10 o'clock in the morning here in Austin. It's going to be located, I've got to pull up it's going to be located in the Stephen F. Austin State Office Building. That's located at 1700 North Congress, room 170. That's 1700 North Congress, room 170. That meeting's open to any interested stakeholder that would care to come and listen to the conversation. This is not the public hearing on the rules. That's actually the week after, I believe on the 28th or 30th. And but this is a time that, based upon some concerns that were voiced at their Medical Care Advisory Committee, which is much like, it appears to be much like GETAC, and they're also very inquisitive, just like you folks are. They actually asked that maybe HHSC hold a meeting with the stakeholders to hear the concerns and see if maybe they needed to work on some of this draft rule language before it went to public comment or before public comment was closed out, to maybe make it a little more palatable to the industry. So that'll be coming up next Thursday. Anybody that's interested is welcome to come out. If anybody has any more information, they're welcome to email myself or Ryan Matthews, and we'd be happy to send them the rule documents and the notice for the meeting. Oh, that's right, and there is an RSVP. It's should I give the email address? If you're going to be coming to the meeting, they do ask for an RSVP because I don't know how big that room is, and they want to make sure they have plenty of space. So if you're coming, email myself or Ryan. We'll send you the email address to RSVP to. It's Alexis Vasquez with HHSC, but if I read that out, people aren't going to have time to write it down. So I'll give it to you via email so it's accurate.
Any comment on the comment? Any other public comments? I believe I only counted 3 agenda items for next council. Is that correct? All from the stroke committee? Okay. About to wrap up the meeting if that's okay. We are early, and, I mean, we're all here, so if there's items to be discussed, we were planning to be here till noon, but if we're not, there's no reason to hang out. So, no, if no one is opposed to completing early, we will complete early, and we will consider ourselves adjourned. Thank you very much.
Good job.